Okay, here's where we left off. Let's see, we were on page 3 and we were at the part where you were talking about my mother's children, your Meemaw's children, which would include me. As mentioned before, my grandmother had 3 daughters. The eldest was raised along with her siblings. Well, I would hope so, since with her siblings, she would later adopt one of her sisters from a mutual feeling that she was the person who raised her. Is this getting confusing yet? Well, no, it's just full of lies. That every page, every page. Okay. The I guess you couldn't find it in your heart to tell the truth about that, and why, I don't know. It could have showed you had a little bit of something in you. But the truth of that is, my mother, Martha, was my mother's baby sister at birth. Her and my oldest sister, the one that lived with her siblings, were 2 months apart. My oldest sister was actually born 2 months prior to my mom's younger sister, Martha. So when my grandmother was in and out, of the hospital or staying with her aunt or whatever she did, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I wasn't there. My mother would take care of the baby and her baby. So the truth really is this. My mother loved her as much as she did her biological daughter. She carried her on her hip alongside her daughter. She took care of any of them that were home. Now, see, you got to remember that Martha was the youngest. I mean, she was the youngest of the whole 10 of them. The 10, she was the youngest. She was the baby, last one. So, and my mother raised her. And when my mother got to Florida, which was years later, she escaped. Now this is her story, and she got away, by just barely got away. Her life would have ended that day if she hadn't left. But slowly she ended up coming back and getting her siblings and her daughter. She got her daughter and Martha first. And then, this is when my dad came along, and that's what he helped her do a lot. They had to organize it very carefully to get everybody where they wanted to be. Now, a couple of her siblings had already married and moved on, so the ones that actually came with to live with my mother and father were, of course, Martha and her brother. One of her brothers came, and he was there pretty much the whole time. And he's the one that went to work with my father and retired from the same place. So she brought as many of them as she could, but she stayed there for a long time and made sure everybody was okay before she ever even attempted to leave. But the particular day she left, she had to leave. And like I said, if you want to hear any more about that, you just let me know, and I'll be happy to tell you. That applies to everyone but Mary. She had the opportunity to hear all these stories, and she just only heard what she wanted to hear. Okay, so no, it's not really confusing. It's called love. That's all it is, just pure love. So when my mother did not realize how much it bothered my sister, I call her my sister, she was my sister, how much it bothered her to actually not be like a legal child. That was my mom. It hurt her. It hurt her bad. She really loved her, and she thought that was that Martha knew. But really, it's so funny to me because I heard them all talk. I've heard everybody's stories, and Martha always told me. She said, sometimes you're. I hate to say, I don't hate to say my oldest sister's name, but she would have a temper tantrum, or just have a meltdown, and she'd get her rear end popped. My mother didn't play around, and Martha always said she wanted a whipping too. I know it sounds crazy, but to her that was a sign of love. Discipline was because you were loved, and she wanted that too. And, I told my sister one day over there, I said, maybe you didn't get as many whippings as she did because you didn't do the things she did. I said, how many times did you throw yourself on the floor? She said, never. Because she, two different people. We were all very different. And I said, well, did it ever dawn on you that maybe that's why you didn't get a whipping? It's because you didn't act that way. You didn't have your little fits. And just like I said, two different people. But she really, I think slowly, before she passed away, she knew that she was indeed loved. And she knew that when my mother presented her with just to talk about getting adopted. Well, my mother was married to Larry at the time. And so the two of them adopted her legally. Her birth certificate and everything was changed. And she legally became their daughter. And she even got married within months of that. But she carried the name all the way. She carried both names, her married name, and she carried their name. It was the best gift in the world, and she was always my sister. But it just made my heart so happy when it became real to her, because it had always been real to me. So that's the little bit of that. Like I said, if y'all are any part of this, y'all let me know, and I'll be happy to share as much as I can. Okay. Let me see if I can flip this page. And I don't know what I've done here, but I made this little sign to be our little thing tonight. Okay, as we move on to page 4. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I think we're on page 4. Let me get back adjusted. All right, where are we at? Oh, no, because she's talking about my older sister, so I must have skipped a little bit. But anyway, her marriage did not last, but this is funny to me. But he did gift her with a child. Dad was secretly gay. Whoops. It's a trend that's going to be repeated. No, it wasn't a trend that would be repeated. It hadn't started. You're just trying to justify yourself and make yourself sound normal. That's the most untrue thing. And it just tore me up when I read that, because my brother-in-law was anything but gay. I can't, just say that for a fact, because I loved him as a brother, but I know I know he was not gay, all right? And he did not just gift her, as you want to put it, with a child. He gifted her with 2 children. There was two children born. There was a little boy first, my nephew, who passed away 2 months after his birth from sudden infant death syndrome. Then they had a little girl. Okay, so let's get that straight. So she was, as you want to put it, gifted with 2 children, not 1. All right, and let's move on real quickly, because that's a lot. I mean, I hate it that we have to go through so much, but you lie on everything. And you said, I wonder if they, I got this not focused good. I wonder if they were trying to choose safe men to avoid the abuse. I never spoken to them about it, honestly. I know everything from the stories my grandmother told me. You're right, you've never spoken to anyone about that, because it's a lie. And you thought that no one would ever know your little book, because you, as you put it, you wrote it anonymously, which was a joke, a big joke. Anonymous to you is very different from anonymous to the rest of us. So, she didn't choose safe men, I promise you. They didn't think that way, and he was a playboy. I think if she was choosing safe men, she'd probably chose one a little different. But and not that after they were married, they were good to each other, and he was good for her. He was like I think in the very beginning, the only problem my mother and father had with him was he was a race car driver. He drove, he was a lot of fun, actually. But, you know, back then, that was just, he was just kind of like, I don't know what you'd call it, but, you know, when they got married, he settled, and he was a good man, really good man. I loved him dearly, and it hurt me to even read that she would write anything so negative about him. She never knew him. You know, I did, and like I said, I can't think, he'll be my brother forever. He's moved on, he's in heaven now. But to me, him and my sister were adorable. And the, you know, someone had told me a long time, I'm just going to insert this, that, because that when you lose a child, it really puts a strain on your marriage. And, you know, maybe I didn't understand that back then. I was 10 years old when he passed away. I probably would have never thought of anything like that. But it is very true. It does really put a strain on your relationships. And this I know now for, you know, unfortunately, I've had to learn lessons, you know, by living it. So, yeah, I can see that now. I mean, no, I never paid no mind to it. I'm whatnot. You know, it broke my heart when they split up, but they were much older. Their daughter was grown and married and had babies. So, you know, when the reasoning why, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But I loved them both, and they're forever in my heart is together. So you can take that for whatever you want. Okay. Now here's where you just thought it was just you come up with this crazy story about at the hospital that I said was saying something about you and in front of my mother and my sister Martha, and you know that totally fabricated story. First of all, it was no one was allowed in there with my mom with anything negative like that. I was very strict about that, and the nurses were really kind enough to make sure that, you know, when you were left alone in there or um, any of y'all were in there, that it was kept upbeat. And I appreciate them forever for that, because, you know, I didn't want my mother's last days to be miserable as you wanted them to be. So, you know, that didn't happen. And in fact, what's really ironic is you were only in the room there one time with, I don't think you were in there with Sarah, but it was a separate day. Y'all just crossed paths, really. And then the other time, the last time, my oldest sister and I had went to get something to eat, and I had talked to her doctor on my way out and the nurses. You were in there. Her great-granddaughter was in there, her first great-granddaughter. My son was there. I believe my other daughter was there. And when I came back, I was nervous because I didn't know, you know. Now, everybody knew. You were the only one that probably didn't listen or comprehend what I said. But as far as the great-granddaughter and my children, they knew. So anyway, when I came back, the doctor pulled me to the side, and he told me that was the best medicine that my mother could have had, was the laughter and the love that come out of that room. And it made me so happy. And then here you go, tarnishing it. But no, I would have never said no such thing to or about, or, you know, my sister, Martha. And listen, she was a virgin. Like I said before in another video, they were good girls. You know, she wouldn't even, if he had a been. Now I'm talking about the Martha, the one that lived over here. She wouldn't have known. She didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. She wasn't worldly as you are, and she wasn't wild like me. So she wouldn't have had a clue. In fact, I could show some pictures. You know, her sons done gave me permission, and I had permission from her prior to her leaving me to tell anything to write a book if I wanted to. So with names, because names, you know, it's factual. So anyway, that's just crazy, and I can show you that, and other people will see it in the photograph that she just, no, you're wrong about that one too. Of course you are. Let's see. Oh, and it, by the way, it really hurt her that you called her a sister daughter. That really hurt her. In fact, I think out of everything she read, that was the most hurtful thing you did was calling her sister daughter, because you did in this trash here. You know, you said sister daughter would go on to marry an abusive man later in life. It's like our bloodline is a magnet for them. No, you know, you're talking about David, who passed away a year before she did recently. And he wasn't abusive. He was a retired police officer. So he wasn't abusive. Not that they're all good people, because they're not. They're just like everybody else. Was he was a stern, he's kind of like my husband. He's kind of a, you know, he's a leader. I hate to use the word controlling, but yeah, they were. You know, they have to have somebody that'll say no to them. Now I let my husband control a lot of things, but when it comes to certain things, I stand up for it, and he knows that when I start talking about disagreeing with him, he knows that I mean it, and I'm going to stay with it, and I'm not going to back down. So that's that. This is quite a bit for just one little page here. So listen, I'm going to stop so I can download it and come back.